Everybody, welcome back to yet another fun and exciting Algebra 1 class. Today we are going to just finish up the chapter. I know you're excited about finishing up this chapter. Some of you factoring has been tough for you. Well, good news. We're going to finish it up today. 7.11. 7.11. And that is on page 268. Page 268. All right, so what are we going to do? We're going to do some word problems. We're going to do two different types of word problems today that incorporate the zero factor property or factoring the equation before we can solve it. All right, so let's just jump right down into it. We're going to do 7.11a. A rectangle that has an area of 104 square feet. Its length is 5 feet more than its width. Find the dimensions of the rectangle. A few things that are important to remember. What is the area formula? Well, it's been a little while since you had pre-algebra with some geometry there. You haven't had to memorize that formula for a while or remember the formula for a while. So the area of a rectangle is A equals LW. LW, length times width. So there it is. That's basically what we're going to start with is that formula. So let's start plugging into it. Let's start kind of putting together what this problem is telling us. And a rectangle has an area of 104 square feet. So in other words, they're telling you what that area equals. So they're saying that let's switch this around. Let's make it LW equals A. That way it'll look more like an equation that we're dealing with. So equals 104. That's the area right there. Okay, 104 square feet. Notice it says its length is 5 feet more than its width. So one thing that we always kind of struggle with is solving equations. Well, we can't have two variables in the equation. We can only have one. So we know that its length is 5 more, so the L, let's say L equals 5 plus W. And then width just equals W. So what did we do? We wrote those both in reference to W. In other words, we got rid of the L. We don't want to take the L. All right, so some of you take the L when you do your test, so we don't want to take the L when we do our test, so we don't want to take the loss there. We want to win. We want the W, okay? So we want to be winners. So how are we going to do that? So we're going to write it, express it in form of W rather than in form of the L. You could also write it in form of the L. That would be fine. That would you'd have to say W minus, or excuse me, L minus 5, I guess is how you would write that. But we'll write it in regards to the win, in regards to the W. So now instead of, when we write it like this down here, instead of the L, we're going to substitute in the 5 plus W. So the length is 5 plus W, and then that would be times W, which is W, okay? Now, one way that we can do this is we can distribute this. And I know I kind of wrote it backwards to distribute, but it's fine. So what do we get? We get W squared, W times W is W squared, plus 5W equals 104. I distributed that through. Yeah, I distributed backwards. I understand that, but I still distributed it through. Now what? Remember, we want to get this equal to 0. That's from the last lesson that we learned, okay? So we're going to move the 104 over. Subtract 104 from both sides, and we're going to end up with W squared plus 5W minus 104 equals 0. Now we've got it in a format that we can factor. Oh, Mr. Steve, look at that. That's a big number. I know it's a big number, but we can still factor it. W and W. Our signs actually don't matter here, but our signs are going to be plus minus, and I'll tell you why they don't matter here in just a second, but they're not going to really matter. What matters is this number right here. This is going to be the hard part. We've got to do a lot of factors of this in order to figure out which one is the right one. I would suggest you use a calculator here. This might help you just a little bit. But obviously 1 times 104 is not going to work because there's no way that's going to give us 5, okay? 2 times 52, no way that's going to give us 5. You might want to be a little bit more creative and kind of jump a little bit to some other numbers that might work. Like I said, I might use a calculator here. So I pulled up my calculator. So 104 is what we're going for. And I might jump to a number because I know if I'm using these small numbers, I'm never going to get 5 because when we subtract them, it's not going to give me 5. So let me jump to a little bit bigger number. Let me just try to divide that by 8, see what I get. Ooh, 8 and 13. Let's try that. So 8 times 13 gives me 104. Does it give me 5? Well, remember, because this is a negative positive, so positive, negative. 13 minus 8 gives me, there's my positive 5. Those are my numbers. So I would have negative 8 and positive 13. Now, one thing that you cannot have, well, let's finish this off first before I say this, okay? So let's set each one equal to 0. Remember how we had to do that? So we're going to get minus 13. So we're going to get W equals negative 13. And then we're going to add 8 to both sides. And so we're going to get W equals positive 8. So we've got 2 different W answers. Now, is it possible for us to have 2 different W answers? Well, it's really not. Okay, so what are we going to want to take? We're going to want to take the positive one. Why? Because the positive one is the value that, I mean, you can't have a negative value. You can't have, the side can't be negative inches long. Okay, it can only be positive inches long. So our width is 8. Now, how do we find our length? Well, go back to the thing where we figured out our length. Our length was W plus 5. So if our width is, so this one can't work. That W doesn't work because it's negative. So we have a width of 8. And so the length would equal W plus 5, or 8 plus 5. In other words, the length equals 13. Okay? The length equals 13. So there's your solution to the problem. The length is 13 and the width is 8. Just a factoring problem. Don't worry too much with that whole negative thing. Just remember, when you get a solution, you can't have a negative length. It's not going to work. So just take the positive answer. All right, let's do the next one. The next one is a little bit more complicated. You're like, wait, more complicated than that one? Yes, it's a little bit more complicated. So let's jump over to page number 270, page 270. Let's do C. Find 2 consecutive integers that when multiplied, the product is 1 less than 6 times their sum. Whoa, what's going on there? Well, let's talk about some of these different things. Find 2 consecutive integers. What does that mean? Well, 2, okay, you know what that means. Consecutive, you should know what that means, like in a row. 1 and 2 are consecutive numbers. Oh, I forgot to write something in there. Let me fix that. 2 consecutive odd. Wondered why that didn't look right. Odd integers. There we go. 2 consecutive odd integers. Okay, so consecutive means in a row. What does odd integers mean? Well, odd is every other, so like 1, 3, 5, 7. And an integer is just a counting number. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about every other counting number, but it's got to be odd. Even numbers 2, 4, 6, 8. Odd numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. That when multiplied, the product is 1 less than 6 times their sum. So let's kind of start with this. Let's kind of do this in 2 different segments. So let's do this first part. Find the product of 2 consecutive odd integers. How would we write that? Well, the way that we write that is 2 consecutive odd integers. So if we take 2 times x plus 1, that's always going to give us an odd number. Okay? What do I mean by that? Well, here's what I mean by that. Take any number, even an even number. So let's take the number 6. If we multiply the number 6 by 2 and add 1, it will always come out to an odd number. What do I mean? Well, let's try it. 2 times 6 is 12. 12 plus 1 is 13. That's an odd number. Watch this. Let's do an odd number there, because maybe you're like, well, that was an even number, so let's try an odd number. 2 times 7, okay, plus 1 equals. Well, what's 2 times 7? That's 14, plus 1, that's 15. Okay, ooh, cool. All right, so what is making it come out odd? Here's what's making it come out odd. When you multiply something by 2, it is going to be even. It has to be even, okay? Because you're multiplying it by 2, so it comes out to an even number every time. You can multiply a prime number by 2. So 2 times 11, that equals 22. That's even. And then when you add 1 to any even number, it always gives you the odd number. So it gives you 23. So that's a little formula to get an odd number. So that little formula right there will always give us an odd number. 2x plus 1 always yields an odd number. So if we take this, so let's find two consecutive odd integers. So if we take this, 2x plus 1, and we multiply that times 2x plus 3, that will give us the next what's called consecutive odd, because now we're at okay, so we took the first one, 2 times 6 plus 1, and that gave us 13. And now we're taking 2 times 6 plus 3. What does that give us? Because now we're adding the next odd integer, and so that gives us 15. So now these are consecutive odd integers. The way that you do that is with this little formula right here. So there's my formula to get an odd integer. So that's the first part. That's when they're multiplied together. And notice what it says. When that happens, this word is important right here. That means that there's an equal sign right there. Okay? So it means that we have 1 less than 6 times their sum. Whoa, what's going on there? Well, 6 times their sum. What do we mean by that? Well, we got to add them together. So we're going to take 2x plus 1, and we're going to add it to 2x plus 3. And then that's going to, and then notice the last thing that says it's 1 less than. So we have to have a minus 1. Whew, lots of stuff going on there. I hope you followed that. Probably like 2 of you followed that, okay? And there's like thousands and maybe millions of people watching this video. Okay, probably not. Probably like 3 people are watching the video. But okay, so 1 of you followed it. All right, so go back, slide that back, and try to follow my progression of thoughts there. But what I did was I tried to, best as I could, I tried to, using algebra, write this. Okay, and I know it's fairly complicated. The biggest thing that you need to, the base is that right there. That's the consecutive odd integer formula. So if you can understand that 2x plus 1 thing, then the rest of it should kind of make sense. Because here, you're doing the product. That's the product right there. And then here, there's the 1 less than. That's the 1 less than. And then this is the 6 times. Okay? And this is the sum. This is where we added them together. So I just kind of try to put all that in order. The only thing that you might not have known is this right here, and that's the consecutive odd integer formula. So I gave you that. And probably on a quiz or a test I would give you that as well, but I'm not sure. Maybe not. So let's go ahead and let's solve this. Whoa, Mr. Steve, we got to solve this? Yes, we need to solve this, okay? So what we want to do here is we want to FOIL. So firsts is going to give us 4x squared. Outers is going to give us 6x. Well, let me put a positive there. It's positive 6x. Inners is going to give us a positive 2x. And then our outers is going to give us a positive 3. And then that's going to equal this. What's this? And we need to do what? Well, we actually don't need to, we need to follow order of operations. What does order of operations tell us to do? Well, technically, order of operations would tell us to do this first. Okay, this is just adding. Okay, we really don't even need these in there. So it's just adding. We're just going to add those up. So let's add those up. So we're going to get 4x, because that's the x's, and then we're plus 4. And don't forget that is 6 times that minus 1. So now we would multiply that through, and that's going to give us, what is that, 24x plus 24 minus 1, or 24x plus 23, because I just combining my like terms. All right, so now I'm going to erase all that, and I'm going to put it up here. You can go back and watch that again if you missed anything there. So I'm going to put it into my formula here. All right, now what do I have to do in order to solve this? Well, what I have to do in order to solve this is set it equal to 0. I want 0 on this side over here, on this right side. How do I get that? Well, I get that by subtracting 24 from both sides. So come over here to these x's. We can actually combine these x's right now. So 8x plus 3 minus 24x. So that's going to come out of this one right here because that's a like term, minus 24x. And then I'm going to subtract 23 as well, minus 23. That's going to come out of here. So that's going to cancel, and then we're going to get equals 0 on that side. Well, what's this going to be? Well, that's going to be 4x squared because we didn't do anything with that one. What happens here? We subtract. What do you get? You get a minus 16x. And then what happens here? We get a minus 20. Well, now it's somewhat manageable. Okay, we got it into a manageable thing. Notice that we have a common factor here, so we can factor out our 4. So we get 4x squared minus 4x minus 5 equals 0. This is a little bit weird right here because 4 is a factor. Whenever you get numerical factors and you set that equal to 0, it's going to look like this. 4 equals 0. Remember when I was talking to you about the extraneous root right there? Well, this is a little bit of an extraneous problem right there. That doesn't come out right. So that just kind of cancels itself out. So whenever you get like numbers that come outside, those end up canceling out, and it's like a no solution. It's extraneous. So anyways, let's keep going with this. What do we need to do here? We need to factor this. Okay, how do we factor that? Well, we factor it into x and x. What are our signs going to be? We're going to get a plus and a minus. Our minus is going to be bigger because that's minus. And we're going to get a 5 and a 1 because 5 only has one factor, 5 in itself. And you do it, you do the outers, and you get that negative 4x. We set each one equal to 0. So we subtract 1 from both sides, and so we get x equals negative 1. And then plus 5. And over there, we would get positive 5. X equals 5. Okay. So now, what is the solution? Well, there's 2 solutions to this one. Okay, so what is the answer to this problem? We didn't really answer the problem. Find 2 consecutive odd integers that when they're multiplied together, the product is 1 less than their sum. So now what we need to do is we need to go back and plug in our answer. So we got negative 1 and 5, but we're not quite done yet. Remember our consecutive odd integer problem? It was 2x plus 1, okay? And 2x plus 3. That was our consecutive odd integer. That's how we got those. I showed you that somewhere up here in this mess, okay? Well, what we would do now is we would take our numbers and we would plug those in. So let's plug in -1. And let's see what we get there. So that gives us -2 plus 1. What is -2 plus 1? -1. Okay, so -1 is a solution. Now watch what happens when we put the -1 in over here. So 2 times -1 plus 3. Or we could just add our, next consecutive one there. But watch what happens. So I get -2 plus 3. -2 plus 3 is 1. So here's one of our solution sets, -1 and 1. So this is one solution. So that one gives us -1 and 1. Okay. What's our other solution? Well, we need to do this again. Let me erase this real quick. All right, so we need to do this again with our other solution of 5. And so now we're going to have 2 times 5 plus 1, which is 10 plus 1, or 11. And then we would also do 2 times 5 plus 3, or 10 plus 3, which is 13. So there's our other solution. The 5 actually yields to us 11 and 13. That's the solution. So there's two solutions to this one. -1 and 1 and 11 and 13 would be the two consecutive odd integers that when multiplying the product is 1 less than 6 times their sum. All right, that was exciting, right? So you learned something new today, hopefully. You might have to watch that 15 times in order to get it all, but make sure that you do try to understand that because you never know one of these questions might show up on a quiz or a test. Make sure that you know how to do those. So any questions, make sure you just drop it in the comments there. I will try to answer any questions that you have. We'll see you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.